Okay, here we go with Excel Lesson 3. You've probably noticed up to this point that our spreadsheets have been a little bland looking. We haven't had any colors or special fonts or any kind of formatting applied to them. So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to format our charts in different ways and also how to apply conditional formatting, which will show different colors or bars depending on the data in the cells. So you need to have open practice lesson 3 if you're following along. And we're going to start with looking at some different kinds of formatting within this table. So first of all, we're going to look at our dates. So we have two columns here, B and C, that each contain dates. And the format is just month, day, year with slashes. This isn't the only option for dates. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see more. Oh, while it's doing that, I should show you. If you ever zoom out so far that you see just pound signs here, you can just widen your columns and those will go away. And sometimes also if you put a rather large number in a cell, you'll see those pound signs. Just widen your columns and your numbers will show up. So I'm going to take this first column, and here on my home ribbon I have a numbers section. So I'm just going to expand that out. And I have some different tabs. I'm going to stay on the number one, and then it's already defaulting to the date selection. And then over here in my drop down, I have different formats that I can choose for my date. So I've decided to do this one with the dashes and with the month abbreviated. Okay, now this next column is also a date. I'm going to do the same thing. Come up here to my number grouping, and this one I only want the day and the month. Okay, so you have a lot of different options on how things display. All right, next I want to look at this cost each column. I'm going to select that. And for this one, I'm going to use a shortcut. I could expand out this and choose accounting, but instead there's a shortcut here. When I hover, you can see that it reads accounting number format. And when I select that, it goes ahead and puts in decimals and zeros and adds a dollar sign. Now, opposed to that, I'm going to come over here to the extended cost column. And for this one, I'm going to apply the comma style. The only difference between the comma style and the currency style is that the comma style does not put in your dollar signs. Sometimes you will see in a column the top number formatted with accounting and the bottom number formatted with accounting, and then everything in between those formatted with comma. Sometimes the dollar signs can get a little bit too much, a little bit too crowded. So that's an option, is to use your comma for everything in the middle. Okay, let's also okay, on this total column, I also want this formatted as, I'm going to do a comma except for the top and bottom. And then on my sales tax column, I actually want more decimals showing. I want to see out to the thousandth place. So I'm going to select that. And then these two buttons here, we have increase and decrease decimal. So each time I click that, it's going to add another decimal to that column. If I change my mind, I can click and decrease. So I'm just going to increase that by 1. Then I've also been looking at this column and decided that I don't need that in my chart. So I want to delete the entire column. When you're deleting an entire column, you never just want to select the data and hit delete because the column is still there. I don't want a blank space right here. I want that gap to close in. So because I'm dealing with the entire column, I'm going to click the column header up on my letter J. And once again, this is selecting clear down through the million something rows in my spreadsheet. And then I right click and choose delete. And as you see, that just scoots over, fills in the gap, and the column is completely removed. I also have a row that I want to remove right here on row 27, hats. Once again, I don't want to do this. I just selected and hit my delete key because it leaves that gap there. So I'm going to Control Z to undo. I want to select the row using my row header, right click and delete, and then that row disappears. If I needed to add a row, like let's say I had something here between magazine and podcast, I'm going to select below where I want the new row to appear, then right click and insert, and then a new row appears above, and I can go ahead and enter my data. That was just for demonstration, so I'm going to Control Z to undo that. Okay, we have some columns that need to be adjusted. As you can see, column A is too narrow for the contents. So I'm just going to double click to widen that, and it's actually widening to the width of the title. So I don't really want that. I'm going to manually go in and drag that back. And then these columns, I'm just going to double click to make sure they're just set to the widest item. Now these columns here, these last four, I want to all be the same width. So I'm going to select them all using the row columns. So again, these columns are selected all the way down to the bottom of my spreadsheet. And then I'm just going to point in between any of them and get my double-headed black arrow. And I'm going to just widen them each to about 16 characters. When I let go, these are all the same width. If I needed my rows to be a certain height, I would do the same thing. I can select all of my rows with my row headers. In between my rows, I get my double-headed black arrow. And if I wanted these just a little bit wider, then I can size them like that. And that just spaces it out more uniformly. I'm going to Control Z to get back to where we were. Okay, let's format this a little bit. So here I have my title for the whole chart, which is going to look a lot better if it's centered between my columns. So I'm going to start out by selecting in row 1 across to column H. So I've defined the area where I want to center this title. And then on my home ribbon, I have a merge and center option. So when I click that, it's merging all of those cells into one cell and then centering the title in the center of it. I also want to change the font and the color of this a little bit. So I'm just going to use my Grow font to make that a little bit bigger. And I'm also going to change my font style. Notice that as long as I'm clicked somewhere on a cell, like I'll just demonstrate with the bold. You know, in Word, we're used to having to select across a word, but as long as you're just somewhere in a cell, whatever attributes you apply will apply to the contents of the entire cell. I'm going to go back to my title and let's change the color to a dark blue. And once again, just like in Word, If I go to my page layout tab, I have colors here. It's defaulted to the Office set of colors, but if I wanted something different, then my colors here will look different. Okay, I'm going to change that back to dark blue. Now I want a pattern fill behind this title. So with my cell A1 selected, I'm going to right click it and go to Format Cells. And then I have a tab that's for fill. And here on my pattern style, I have some different options. Now in your assignment, it will tell you choose 6.25% gray. So you just need to hover over these until you find the one it's asking for. And then if I want that to be a color, I select it and it's patterned those dots behind my title. Okay, now I want to format these column headers here. So instead of doing them all individually, I'm going to select them at once. And I want these bolded and underlined. And I also want them centered, but I'm not going to use the merge and center. This is only for titles that are centered across columns. To just center a title within its own column, I'm going to use this center alignment tool. And I'm also going to grow my font a little bit. And I'm going to change the color to match my title, and it remembers what color I chose next, so I can just click here and not have to pick it from the drop down. And then I'm going to change my font. Don't really like that one. Okay. And because of that, my column needs to be wider. Okay, now that this is done, I've decided I want to do a couple of things. First, I don't like this extra row here in between row 1 and 3. I want that gap to be closed. So I'm going to click on row 2, right click, and delete. And then I also want a border between my title and my columns. So I'm going to click on this top cell. And I have a borders tool, much like what I had in Word. And I want a bottom double border. And I'll click away so you can see. Okay. If I needed borders applied to more than one cell, for example, if I wanted lines in between each of these cells, I could select it all and choose all borders, and it's like a grid. I'm going to undo that. An alternative to formatting the table yourself is to choose from a set of pre-built table styles. And again, this is really similar to when we did our tables in Word. I'm going to select all of my data, and then on my home ribbon, I have a Format as Table option. And within that are a lot of different options for tables. So I have my banded rows and my headers, and as you choose those, it will say, is this the data for your table? Yes. And when I come in, it's formatted. Some work better than others. It likes to put in these sorters, and if you don't like those, you can just go to the Data tab and turn off this filter. This also tried to put in columns for me. I think as I come back, I'm going to not include my title and go back to home, format as table. And that's a lot better. And then I'm going to go to my Data tab and turn off the filter. Okay, so a lot of different options for your tables. Some people prefer to just color and shade things themselves, but these built-in ones are really nice too. You also have some built-in cell styles. So I'm going to apply one of those to these two cells up here for my sales tags. If I go to my sales tags, there or into my cell styles, there are a lot of different options. Where it has bad, good, neutral, this doesn't really assign any value to the cells. It just is a preset color. So if I chose neutral, it would just color it the yellow and change the font. Okay, now we're going to work with our sheet tabs down here at the bottom. This sheet 1 I'm going to call um, actual. So to change the name, I'm just going to double click and then it turns black and it's ready for you to type. And this sheet 2 I'm going to call budgeted. And then I'm going to go back and right click on my actual and change my tab color to red. And for budgeted, I'm going to right click and change my tab color to green. And that just helps differentiate those two. And then let's say that I don't like the order these are in. I want budgeted to appear first. So I'm just going to click it and drag, and you see the little black triangle. When I let go, they've switched places. And I think we've covered this before, but if I needed more sheets, I can just click on any of my tabs, right click, and then insert and leave the default as worksheet. And then you'll have another sheet in there. And you can name these whatever you want. You can change the order however you want. If I add a sheet and decide I don't want it, I can just right click and delete. Okay. The next thing I want to show you is conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is a really cool tool that can help different data stand out. Before I do that though, I want to clear this table style because I want colors to be able to show up better. So I'm just going to choose a table style that does not have banded rows. Okay, so I'm going to look at this column here, my extended cost. And what I want to happen is anything between the numbers 2000 and 4000, I want to be red. So I've selected my data here, and then I'm going to come here on my home ribbon to conditional formatting. And then I have my highlight cells rules. And I'm looking at a between. I want to say anything between 2000 and 4000 we're going to fill with red. So I'm choosing the between here. Obviously, if I were looking for greater than 3000, I would go here, or less than another number, I would go here. But we're going to do between. And it always tries to guess what you need, but it's never right. I've never had this read my mind. So you're going to have to manually type in the numbers that you want. Okay, and then here are my options for fill. So if I wanted a light red fill, then I click OK. And when I come back, everything between 2000 and 4000 is now red. If you were using this for sales data or any kind of numbers that you want to stand out or alert your reader, conditional formatting can be really powerful. Now notice if I change this one to 1000, it automatically adjusts and is no longer red. Okay, another kind of conditional formatting is data bars, and I'm going to apply those to this total column. And once again, it's in conditional formatting, but instead of my highlight cells rules, I'm going here to data bars. And I can choose a gradient fill, which is kind of an airbrushed look, or a solid fill. I'm going to do a gradient fill green. And when we come back, notice that it's created a little bar chart within the cell. I think I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to select this again and leave out my total. Let's go back. Okay, that's better. It will view the highest number in your column as the max, and then everything else is proportionate to that number. So by leaving out this one, it helps my data bars appear more accurate. So I can easily see that my highest number here is this 8,156, and then I can see that my lowest number is here or here. So it just creates a little mini chart within that cell, proportionate to the rest of your numbers. So data bars. Let's go back to this first conditional formatting I did. Let's say that after applying a conditional formatting, I decide that I don't like it or I need to change it somehow. So I'm going to select the area that it's applied to, go back to conditional formatting, and then come to manage rules. And here are my two conditional formattings I've applied. The column I've selected is this one. So if my value is between 2,000 and 4,000, light red. So I'm going to click on that and then edit the rule. And here I can change my numbers. So if I actually wanted it greater than 4,000, and if I wanted it a different color, so my fill, if I wanted it purple or blue, then I just apply and it's changed. Okay, you have to always make sure that you select first what you're applying this to. So I'm going to go to Manage Rules, my data bar, Edit, and if I want my color to change, or I don't want a border on it, I can just change a lot of different things. Okay, so conditional formatting and data bars. Last type of conditional formatting I want to show you is the icon sets. They're pretty fun. So I'm going to look at this quantity column here, and I want to apply little pictures next to each of these numbers that will demonstrate if they're high, low, or in the middle as compared to the rest of the numbers in this column. So I select my data. I'm leaving out this last total number because I don't want it to throw off the rest of my numbers. And then I'm going to conditional formatting and icon sets. And I can choose, I'm just going to hover over some of these so you can see. It looks like everything it's either reading as a high or a low, nothing really in between. Or I could do my little star ratings, flags. So kind of fun. I think I like the stars. So again, depending on what you're trying to show, it's a good way to make certain numbers stand out. So right away you can tell which numbers, which items had a really high quantity because they're starred. You may have noticed in this spreadsheet that we have a few misspelled words. That was intentional. So here, what page should be ads? There's a few more down the list that are misspelled. So it's a good idea when you've actually typed an assignment to go in and run the spell check. And that is on the Review tab, Spelling. And this works just like Word. You're just going to pick from the suggestions, and this just means it's finished. So it just found two. The other thing that we want to do on this is a find and replace. So I'm going to go back to my home, and then I have a find and select, and I want to do the replace option. So as I finish this spreadsheet, I've decided that I want to, every time I've typed the word billboard, I want that changed to sign. So I'm going to type in the word billboard to find and replace with sign. And then I just replace all, and it's made two replacements. So find and replace is a really good tool if you change your mind about the vocabulary that you want to use or the way you want to say things. I use find and replace all the time in Excel with the yearbook because I have a spreadsheet just like this with the names of all the kids in the school. And if I need to find someone on that list to see how many pages they've been featured on, I can just use the find feature in Excel. The shortcut, by the way, is Control F, and that just pulls up. You can either choose to find or to find and replace. Okay, I think that's all for lesson 3. Some of your assignments are pretty strict about which colors you apply. Others let you choose and be more creative. But please make sure that you understand the conditional formatting and how that works. That will be on your tests later. And also make sure that you understand the differences between your different types of formats up here, increase, decrease decimal, and your formatting tools here. And that concludes lesson 3. Have fun.